Morning, people. Today, the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson, strengthened his position as the lone voice of reason and compassion in the Tory party by telling asylum seekers that if they don't like the barges that his party will be chucking them on, they can fuck off back to France. Now obviously, isn't it crazy that a Member of Parliament is swearing and shouting some stuff that you'd expect to hear at closing time at a pub after a Millwall game? But I want to talk about the reaction to it, especially from politicians like Alex Chalk. Because you know my policy on this stuff, they're not doing it because of any deeply held beliefs, it's performative. They're simply playing the part of far-right nationalists because they believe that that will get them elected. Lee Anderson has even admitted that their rhetoric around marginalised groups is just the ingredients that they've come up with to win elections.
At the next election, we haven't got those three things, so we're going to have to think of something else. It'll probably be a mixture of culture wars and trans debate.
Which is what I find fascinating because Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, Lee Anderson, they all do this. They've all been on camera bragging about how they can manipulate our politics. Donald Trump did it when he bragged that
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters.
Because Trump benefited from the bed of nails phenomenon, where if you lie on one 10-inch nail, you die, but if you lie on 100,000, none of them have the pressure to puncture your skin. Don't try this at home, I can't afford the medical lawsuit. Because if Trump had been a more or less decent politician and just done one bad thing, like he'd just said the thing about banning Muslims from the country, just talked about grabbing women by the vagina, then he would have been held to account as a normal politician who did a bad thing. But he said and did so many bad things that just became Trump being Trump. He normalized shitty behavior in politics. It was just locker room talk, or him telling it how it is. Similarly, Boris Johnson benefited from the same strategy, and just like Trump and Lee, he admitted to it.
I've got a brilliant new strategy, which is to make so many gaffes that nobody knows which one to concentrate on.
So they cease to be newsworthy.
They cease to be newsworthy. You shell them, you pepper the media. What you do is you've got to pepper their positions with so many gaffes that they're confused. It's like chaff, it's like a helicopter throwing out chaff. And then you steal on quietly and drop your depth charges wherever you want to drop them.
Because these people know they're doing bad things, but they figured out that the more bad things they do, the more successful they become. Now I think we're at the point where it's no longer acceptable to call people like this sociopaths or psychopaths, because that adds stigma to the people who suffer with these mental conditions. And so I'm trying to remove those words from my political dictionary. Every day's a school day. But there is no morality in these people. They're aware of morality, they know that other people try to follow these sorts of rules, but they don't. Because they can't not know. They see the news, they know how much poverty the UK is facing, and they know they're making it worse. And yes, Brexit is a litmus test. It's something that you can use to figure out whether these politicians are good people or not. Because these people are not economists. Boris Johnson studied classics at university, which is why he's always speaking in Latin and quoting Greek poems. Lee Anderson never went to uni. Neither of them have any reason to believe that they know better than the economists when it comes to the economic effects of their policies, like Brexit. And in 2018, the government's official expert said that no matter what version of Brexit they negotiated, it would leave the people of the UK poor, a population that had just been through 8 years of austerity. And the crazy thing is, Lee Anderson is himself from a working class background. Now obviously he's now earning 84k as an MP, plus 100 grand from GB News, but he grew up with the very people that his policies are pushing deeper and deeper into poverty. And now, despite having the privilege of an 180k salary, he's turning around to the people that he left behind, people using food banks, and telling them it's their own fault they're hungry.
That there's not this massive use for food banks in this country. We've got generation after generation who cannot cook properly, they can't cook a meal from scratch, they cannot budget, the challenge is there.
These people aren't making mistakes, it's deliberate. Boris Johnson knew that Brexit would make us poor because he said so in 2011 and 2013.
I'd vote to stay in the single market. I'm in favour of the single market. I want us to be able to trade freely with our European friends and partners.
But he supported making us poor so he could become Prime Minister. My point is, it's clear to everybody that these people are monsters, but especially it's clear to Tory MPs. All Tory MPs. Because Boris Johnson couldn't have gotten to where he got without the continued support of Tory MPs. Hell, even when he finally got kicked out of Parliament, Tory MPs, on balance, refused to vote to punish him for lying about breaking the law during lockdown. Just like when the Tories voted to change the rules to protect Owen Paterson, even after the official investigation found him guilty of bribery. And today, with the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party literally telling refugees to fuck off, this is what Tory MP for Cheltenham, Alex Chalk, had to say.
Your colleague, Lee Anderson, Tory Vice Chairman, has told Express.co.uk if they, the asylum seekers, don't like the barges, then they should clear off, I've changed that word, clear off back to France. Yeah. Does he speak for the party?
Yeah, Lee Anderson expresses the righteous indignation of the British people. Yeah, he does it in salty terms, and that's his style. But his indignation is well placed.
Now, Alex Chalk is the Justice Secretary. Lee Anderson is the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. So we're not talking about a couple of small backbench MPs going a bit fascist on the sidelines. This is the leadership of the Conservative Party. And just like with Boris Johnson saying horrendous stuff for years and the Tories still supporting him, the same thing is happening with Lee Anderson. And Alex Chalk has generally been known as one of the softer Tories. He backed Remain until the referendum, but then just like every other Tory, he helped Boris Johnson become Prime Minister, knowing that Boris Johnson had led a campaign of lies, illegality and bigoted abuse his entire career, and that the experts they'd be relying on during Brexit had already calculated that it would make us poorer. So can we stop with this idea that there are nicer Tories, that people like Boris Johnson, Lee Anderson, Mark Francois, Nadine Dorries are the worst of them, and that some of them are better than others? Because the guy who opens the door and lets the tiger into the school is just as bad as the tiger who eats the kids. Because they know what these people are, but they still stand shoulder to shoulder with them in elections. Worse still, by appearing to be the cuddly Tories in the party, they act as the spoonful of sugar to help the fascism go down. Now, I'm not saying that therefore all Conservatives are evil. I'm saying that therefore all Conservatives are evil. Wait, sorry, have you got the subtitles turned on? Because there's supposed to be a capital C on the second Conservative. I mean the people that are still in the party, capital C Conservatives, because if you're still helping that party win elections, after everything they've done, you are part of the problem. Everybody who had a shred of decency got kicked out of the party years ago because they refused to support a no-deal Brexit. You remember no-deal Brexit? The thing that in 2018, the British Medical Association said would make pandemics worse. Which, by the way, makes everybody who opposed no-deal Brexit back then a national hero, so give yourself a clap. But I used to campaign with Conservatives like Dominic Grieve and Anna Soubry against Brexit. Now, obviously, they're Conservatives. I disagree with them on a bunch. I've seen their voting records. But I could at least respect them on the basis that they were trying to do good. Because that's what politics should be. People on the left arguing that we should share more to pull people out of poverty, people on the right saying we should let the market do its thing, and eventually it'll trickle down. But with both sides trying to make people's lives better. But that doesn't exist anymore. They're deliberately hurting people. That's been clear since John Redwood refused to debate me in 2018.
Their own experts say that every possible Brexit scenario leaves this country financially, economically worse off, which means that right now what they're trying to do is something that they know will harm the country. That makes it official Tory policy to harm the country.
Okay, John Redwood, if you'd like to respond to that, good afternoon to you.
No, I don't think I'll respond to that. I wasn't told we were having a debate. You asked me to do an interview on what the options are for our future.
So the Tories are simply the bad guys. We don't need to be nuanced about that. The only question is, why do the bad guys have so much power? Which is why it's perfect that we're talking about Alex Chalk today, because he's the perfect example. In the 2019 election, which was specifically called to deal with Brexit, both Labour and the Lib Dems were offering a way out. Both of them said they'd give us a referendum on the Brexit deal after it had been negotiated, unlike 2016, which was a blank check. And in Cheltenham, where Alex Chalk is the MP, it was extremely clear that Labour had no chance of winning, whereas the Lib Dems had always been just behind the Tories. So all it needed was for Labour voters to vote tactically for the Lib Dems, or for the Labour candidate to stand down, and that would have meant one less Tory in Parliament backing up calls for refugees to fuck off. But the Tories got 48% of the vote, the Lib Dems got 46%, and Labour got 5%. So objectively, the majority of the people in that constituency voted for much more left-leaning, progressive, decent policies than what the Tories had to offer, and 56% of them voted Remain, but they got a Tory Brexiteer as an MP who supports aggressive xenophobia. The reason we get such horrendous people in Parliament is because our voting system simply disregards the votes of any party that doesn't come first, hence why it's called first past the post. So don't let the Tories being performatively evil distract you from the main problem. Changing the voting system is our way to a better UK. I'm Femi, have a great week.